Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, at least for me personally, someone who follows these kids out of the high school ranks, you get into the conversation about who's going to break out for the Georgia Bulldogs in 2025. I don't know if there's a more fun team to do this for, because you take a look at this roster. You look at this depth chart, there are a ton of candidates. Does Georgia have more questions than answers than we're used to seeing going into 2025? Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you this. They got a lot of potential answers on this roster. Dill, we went back and forth, and we came up with our top 5 breakout players for this Georgia program going into 2025. Got some hot takes in this one for one as well. Before we get into it, as always, the Georgia fans, let it fly in the comment section. If you're a Georgia fan that's listening to Georgia football middle of February, chances are you got some names as well in the comment section. Let it fly. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, I guess I'll start. This is kind of my guy here, Ryan Puglisi. And that means he's winning the quarterback one job going into 2025. Dill, this is not an anti-Gunnar Stockton take. It really isn't. This is a Ryan Puglisi might be the most underrated football player on this team. And you look at why. Well, he was in the same class as Dylan Raiola. And so obviously Dylan was getting a ton of the buzz until he decommitted from Georgia. Comes in, gets hurt in spring practice. You don't hear a ton from him in year one. Going into year 2, you look at, if you were just to kind of compare Gunnar Stockton and Ryan, Ryan's kind of the winner in terms of the physical traits category. 6'3", 210, massive arm, works the middle of the field exceptionally well. I think the story is, can he put it all together and show that command of the offense that's so important for Kirby Smart when he's taking a selection of his quarterbacks? If he does come in year 2, really shows that he can run this Georgia offense, one, there's no question mark that I think he wins the starting quarterback spot. And number 2, Dill, you talk about ceiling. You talk about what does the best version of Georgia look like in 2025. Me personally, again, not a shot at Gunnar Stockton. It's with Ryan starting at quarterback in 2025.
And another thing, you kind of have with Ryan Puglisi is a guy who, I think wants to be at Georgia. And that's the narrative that's being floated around. Like, I agree with that. I think the Georgia fans were like, this guy, I think he's made of the right stuff. I think he wants to be a Bulldog. Like, not saying Gunnar Stockton doesn't, but I agree. I think has the ceiling you're kind of looking for, but also, again, a guy that I think you just trust his mentality, maybe a little bit more than some of the Georgia quarterbacks.
Didn't flinch one time when Dylan committed to Georgia in that 2024 class. You talk about being wired the right way. I don't even think he took any other visits. And people were like, hey, what are you going to do now that Dylan's committed to? Ain't nothing changed for Ryan. I'm totally with you.
Frankly, Georgia Georgia's kind of been in the position where they haven't had questions for the past 3 or 4 years. It feels like they are being counted out a little bit more. And I think you look like you probably want a quarterback who maybe is a little more comfortable with being a bit of a dog and being a bit of a guy who isn't particularly afraid of adversity, because I look like they are going to need better quarterback play. I don't know if everything's going to be perfect around them at the wideout position. I like what they did in the portal, but I think they need a quarterback who can be a bit more of an elevator than probably even what they had last year.
And I think you're right in terms of Ryan Puglisi being that guy, and Dill as an athlete. Like, a lot of the times when you talk Gunnar Stockton, he brings a little bit of that two-dimensional kind of quarterback that can give you some juice in the run game. Puglisi can too. He's a really, really good athlete. And I went back, and as we were preparing this, took a look at his senior film. That senior film up there in the state of Connecticut, it was an absolute laser show. He perfect size. I mean, 6'3", 210. You couldn't ask for a better physically gifted quarterback, but this kid can make all the throws as well. Let's go to number 2. I'll let you have the T-boxes. We both came to the same consensus that Chris Cole has to be on this list. I will let you sell the people first on Chris Cole breaking out in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, the second you put the film on, you see the size, kind of speed profile, exactly what you're looking for. And to be that big and that smooth, I think you really obviously, just the athletic potential. But the big thing I look at is I think they kind of have the two in the middle, if you will, 2 linebackers in the middle, I should say, with C.J. Allen and Raylan Wilson kind of figured out. Those guys aren't coming off the field a whole lot. You look where they need to replace, it's going to be Jalen Walker, because Jalen Walker was so important for what that team was doing. Chris Cole with that versatility, again, we haven't seen a ton of him as a pass rusher, but everything about what he's made of makes me think he can do it. I think they do need that impact difference maker, kind of versatile linebacker to replace Walker. I like it. Chris Cole is kind of being the guy.
He's literally the look. It's very hard to do what Jalen Walker did. Like, you got to be kind of a freak, because you got to be able to play off ball linebacker, drop out in space, go sideline to sideline, but you also have to hold up at the point of attack when you're lined up on the line of scrimmage. Also get after the passer. It's hard to find guys that are equipped to, I'm just going to call it the Jalen Walker position. Like, Chris Cole can do that. The physical specs with Chris Cole is special, and I'm with you. You're looking to at least try to replace the impact that Jalen Walker had. And it's also a conversation of, Dill, you have to get your best players on the football field. It's hard for me to look at Chris Cole going into year 2 and say he's not your best 11. Now, I don't know if he starts over CJ Allen and Raylan Wilson at the off-ball backer position, but you feel like you got to get him on the football field. Very similar to how we talked about Jalen Walker heading into 2024. They're going to figure out a way to do it.
You do have the piece. Like, you kind of know he can play in space. I thought that's where you got to see him last year.
He played safety in high school until his senior year. Sorry.
What you're going to need to know is whether he can rush the passer and kind of be the difference maker along the line of scrimmage that I think you frankly want him to be, at least at this stage in his career. Because, again, where I think he could slot in, it's tough to dethrone the two guys in the middle. They both play really, really well.
Yeah.
But I think he could slot in and being that, what you kind of said. So that piece will be, what can he do along the lines of scrimmage, or around the line of scrimmage, I should say. But again, the physical tools are absolutely.
Yeah, it's him and Justin Williams. Like, to me, it's just you got two freaky dudes. You got to figure out a way to let them impact the football game in 2025. Number 3 on the list, and I'm going to go, I don't really do too many true freshmen on this still, but Juan Gaston. One, taking a look at what he did in those All-Star Bowls, I mean, was pretty clearly like one of the most physically gifted ones. Number 2, he's different than a guy like Nair Daniels or Daniel Calhoun. Right, Daniel Calhoun, when he committed to Georgia, when he was coming into Georgia, it was pretty clear he needed a year to lose some weight, get the body right before he was ready to play SEC ball. Juan Gaston, he's 6'7", 365. He carries it exceptionally well. Extremely light on his feet. Overwhelming power when he gets hands on you. Why am I going to Juan Gaston? One, because I don't think either of the tackle positions are locked down. Like, I think that's going to be a competition, even if he doesn't cut it at tackle. He's going to be a really good guard, which you're still looking for guys to step up there too. Most importantly, we got to get back to running the football for Georgia. It just wasn't normally the things we could lean on. What we knew about Georgia going into a football season was they're going to dominate the defensive line. They're going to dominate the offensive line. They're going to run the football. They were actually pretty dang poor at running the football in the 2024 year. A guy like Juan Gaston, I understand, is a true freshman coming in, does not look like a true freshman, will help Georgia run the football as well. Fired me off for Juan Gaston getting on the football field as a true freshman, because he's sure as hell ready.
Yeah, and you kind of said it. Like, he is again, he kind of has the measurables of the Calhoun, the Nair Daniels, but just like the look about him
is different.
Physically, a little. You said it. Like, we were watching, and again, you take what you want from when you're in shorts and a t-shirt, but he is moving the way you want him to move. And on the other hand, like, I don't think you have a ton of questions about the physicality. You just look at how big, how strong he is, and what he looked like in his high school film. So, again, I think you're right. That probably was the real issue, fundamentally, why Georgia wasn't Georgia necessarily last year. And it was the fact their offensive line was not up to snuff, or not up to what I think most people expected Georgia unit to be. You look, they have started to recruit that position a little bit, or quite a bit better. It feels like bringing bigger classes, higher ranked guys. Juan Gaston, though, you look at where he kind of finished up and how late, he is a bit of a late riser, but a guy who now I do think you look at as being a potential day one impact guy.
Yeah. And again, it goes back to, it's just different than a guy like Daniel Calhoun. He carries the weight better. He's significantly more light on his feet, better athlete. Number 4, Lawson Lucky Dell. Probably should have, in my opinion, sitting here in my basement on a Friday afternoon, telling Kirby Smart how to coach football. This episode is that, hey, we should have gotten Lawson Lucky on the field more. I thought he was arguably your best tight end. And Dill, do you agree with that? Like, am I crazy to say Lawson? Like, to me, it was whenever Lawson Lucky was getting a shot, good things were happening. I like Oscar Delp. Lawson Lucky sure as heck should have been playing over Ben Yurosek. Dill, we all know how important the tight end position is to Georgia. Lawson Lucky going into year 3, I think is going to be that guy, and he didn't get a ton of buzz because obviously when he came in, you still had Brock Bowers, and then Delp was supposed to be the guy that was going to follow Brock Bowers. And I'm not saying Oscar Delp's not a good football player. We all know Georgia likes to run a lot of 12 personnel. It's going to be Oscar Delp and Lawson Lucky, but Dill, I think Lawson Lucky's the better tight end, and I think Georgia's going to show that in 2025 and really try to get him the opportunities that I think he deserves in this Georgia offense.
And I think it comes down to, do you ever think Oscar Delp's going to be that guy who, when he gets his matchup, you can pretty much just pencil it in, he's going to win it, and he's going to be a problem? I don't really think that was the case. Again, he made good plays for them last year. He can block. He's kind of an all-around good, complete tight end, but he wasn't the scary difference maker matchup guy that Georgia frankly needed, because you weren't really getting it on the outside. I think most Georgia fans kind of recognize that. You needed one of the tight ends to do it. And Lawson Lucky, again, as he kind of progresses in his career, at least from an athletic standpoint, has the ability to be that guy who, if he get, like, you really do need to key in on him, because one-on-one matchups, he should be able to win consistently, because that size, that athleticism, and that, like, body control and ability to catch, like, difficult passes, like, he does have that. I'm not sure the other tight ends did last
year. Zero drops in 2024 too. I love my tight ends that don't drop footballs. Defensive line, we got 2. We got one that we're stretching it. We're stretching it here, though, with Christian Miller. You could argue he broke out in the 2025 or 2024 year. That is 17 quarterback carries. That was 3rd on the team, only behind Jalen Walker, who is one of the best pass rushers in the country, and Damon Wilson, who now is at Missouri. You're looking for who are going to be the forces in the pass rush. Christian Miller is probably where you start the conversation. And what I love about Christian Miller is, go back to 2023, and it was a little bit more of like pass rush specialists, and guys like Nas Stackhouse were the run defender, so to speak. Took massive strides in how he stops the run too, which is obviously really important. If you're not going to play the run, you ain't going to play. There's a reason Chaz Chambliss played so much for Georgia. He wasn't the best pass rusher in the world, but he played the run damn hard. Christian Miller took massive steps in that 2024 year playing the run. Why I want to bring up Christian Miller is we're looking for that game record for Georgia on the inside. When Georgia defenses are elite, they have a game record. Whether it's Jordan Davis, whether it's Jalen Carter, can Christian Miller be that guy for Georgia in 2025? If you're asking me who I think it is, my answer is going to be Christian Miller.
Yeah, because I think you do want more completeness from your defensive tackles. I do think Georgia lacked that a little bit last year, because as good as Stackhouse and like those guys were at stopping the run and being physical, like Brinson is, like, those two did do a good job doing that, but they weren't elite pass rushers. And that was something like, yeah, Georgia did do a good job of getting teams behind the sticks. I thought they stopped the run for the most part pretty well last year, but it didn't feel like you had that really dominant elite swarming pass rush, especially from the inside. And that, again, Christian Miller has much more upside. He's a much better athlete than those two. And as he rounds his game out, and you'll still need to see that, like, will he do it consistently the way that?
Yeah, but the thing why I'm so optimistic on him is, like, you're seeing the progressions. Like, this is not just me sitting here like, I'm just going to name a random Georgia defensive lineman and say he's going to break out. You've seen him take steps. He's gotten better as a football player every single year. What happens if he takes another step in 2025? You're looking at dominance. Here's another name that this is kind of, I'm just taking a random Georgia Bulldog, but a guy I love coming out of high school, a guy that we knew. Look, he wasn't an Elijah Griffin. We knew Joseph Jonah was probably going to need a year. In terms of physically gifted, outside of a guy like maybe Elijah Griffin and Isaiah Gibson, 2 cats they have coming in as true freshmen, probably the most gifted physically. This kid is an absolute freak show and offers you a lot of versatility. Could play the 3-tech, could probably play, certainly is an athlete enough to play as a heavy-handed edge. A lot of different things you can do with him. Georgia historically has taken these kind of kids and created absolute monsters. He's going to be a monster at some point, in my opinion. Is it going to be in 2025 or 2026? I couldn't tell you. But if it's in 2025, you're going to see a guy that is an all-SEC caliber football player once he puts it together. Now the question is, does it all come together in the 2025 year?
There's spots up for grab on that.
Agreed.
On the defensive line. So there are room for guys who can do a little bit of different things and maybe give you again, just give you a little bit more disruption, because I think that is something I'd be looking at for Georgia. Like, can they be more dominant and smothering in the way that you've seen like those 21 teams or that 22 team, like the way those teams played defensive line? It was a little bit different. I don't think really anyone's seen it in the college football level really until Georgia, maybe some of the better Alabama teams, but like those were such different units. They had the difference makers, like what you said, a Jalen Carter, a Devontae Wyatt, those type of players. You probably would like to see them get back to being able to put first round guys at the defensive tackle spot into the league. Like,
you're leaving out Michigan in that conversation. I didn't love that, but I'll take it.
That is crazy for me, Michigan
guy. We were up there. And Dill, I mean, you talk about the importance. Like, that's the only reason Michigan won any football games. I should tell you, sure as heck, it wasn't because of our offense. When you have guys like Mason Graham or Jalen Carter that takes over games along the line of scrimmage, and I don't need to tell Georgia fans this because they saw with their own two eyes too. They know what it looks like. Can you get back to that? You certainly stacked the talent in this room, and now it's like, hey, Joseph Jonah, or a guy like Elijah Griffin or Isaiah Gibson as true freshman. Can we get back to that dominance? You're talking 6'4", 275, probably a little heavier now with a 6'10" wingspan. This kid is gifted off the charts. So many players that could break out for Georgia. And again, it kind of goes back to how we opened this thing. Yeah, there's more questions than we're used to seeing for Georgia. Dale, you take one look at this depth chart. They got plenty of answers going into 2025. We'll close it down there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.